Aileen Wuornos, you've probably heard the name. It immediately brings up these images of a roadside predator, maybe America's most famous female serial killer. But behind all the headlines and the Hollywood movies, there's a story that's so tangled up with trauma and betrayal, it really makes you question everything you think you know. So let's get into it. Right from the jump, Aileen herself was telling a different story. In her own words, she was basically screaming that the narrative everyone was being sold was a complete lie. This really sets up the huge conflict at the heart of her case. Was she a cold-blooded killer, or was something else going on entirely? And that's the big question, right? What is the real story here? That's what we're going to try and figure out. We're going to peel back the layers on one of the most complicated criminal cases out there, looking at court records, research, and even her own words. Okay, first up, Damsel of Death. Let's talk about the character the media created. Because the public didn't just meet a person named Aileen Wuornos, they were introduced to a full-blown caricature. I mean, listen to these names. Damsel of Death, the hooker from hell. Right away, the media wasn't just reporting on a person, they were creating a supervillain. These weren't descriptions, they were brand names for a horror story. And it made it really easy for everyone to just see a monster, not a human being. And at the heart of that horror story was this number: 7. Between 1989 and 1990, Aileen Wuornos killed 7 men on the highways of Florida. Now, that is a cold, hard fact. Nobody disputes it. But the why and the how, well, that's where the story just shatters into a million pieces. So to really understand those pieces, we've got to go way, way back to the very beginning. Her story kicks off with a childhood that is, and I'm not exaggerating here, almost unbelievably tragic. Just look at this timeline. At 6 months old, she's abandoned by her mom. At age 2, her father, a convicted child rapist, kills himself in prison. She ends up with a grandfather who was just cruel and beat her constantly. Then at 13, she's raped, gets pregnant, and has to give the baby away. By 15, she's kicked out of the house and is completely on her own. This isn't just a tough upbringing, it's a relentless, non-stop nightmare. And there's actually a clinical term for all this. Psychologists call them adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs for short. And the research is pretty clear. The more of these you go through, the higher the risk for serious health and behavioral problems down the road. Aileen Wuornos' childhood wasn't just a sad story. It was practically a textbook case study for a high ACEs score. And this isn't just some theory we're throwing around. It's grounded in real academic work. For instance, this whole framework is detailed in a dissertation from Walden University that looked specifically at female serial murderers. And guess what? It draws a direct line from these exact kinds of terrible childhoods to the crimes they committed later in life. Okay, so with all that trauma as the backdrop, let's turn to the killings themselves. Because this is where we get 2 completely different stories about what really happened out there on those Florida highways. So you've got 2 completely different versions of events. In Aileen's corner, she's saying it was all self-defense, that she was a sex worker who got attacked by her clients and had to kill them to save her own life. But then you have the state side. They're saying, no way. They argued she was pretending to be a damsel in distress just to lure men in, rob them, and then kill them. And you just can't square those 2 stories. They can't both be true. And Aileen always pushed back hard against this idea that she was just on some constant bloodthirsty rampage. She said, quote, "I didn't kill him every day. I went through a hell of a lot of men before the next jerk came along." She wasn't framing it as a spree, you see. She was framing it as these awful, isolated incidents where she had to fight for her life. So she gets arrested. And that's when things just go completely off the rails. This next chapter is really all about betrayal and a total media circus. It's a mess. I mean, her story was literally for sale. Check this out. Her own partner, Tyria Moore, she cooperates with the police and becomes the star witness against her. The cops who arrested her, they got caught trying to sell movie rights to her life story while the investigation was still active. Even one of the prosecutors admitted that the whole thing turned into a frenzy, with people pandering to the media just to get their moment in the spotlight. And you can just feel how all of this crushed her. She said this experience, being sold out by people she trusted and used by the system, was what really taught her to hate. For someone who had been abandoned since she was a baby, this had to feel like the final, ultimate betrayal. And that brings us to the final part of her story, which is, well, it's a strange one. Her time on death row and her bizarre embrace of her own execution. At her trial, psychologists basically painted this picture of a deeply, deeply damaged individual. She was diagnosed with both borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. They even found what they called organicity. It's an older term, but it basically points to signs of brain damage or dysfunction. One expert argued her childhood was so awful that she just never developed a sense of self-worth or any real coping skills, a person in constant, lifelong pain. So you have this person who is psychologically shattered, and she's at the center of this insane media storm. And then she does something that just floors everyone. She fires her lawyers, pleads no contest to the other murders, and basically demands her own execution. Her lawyer even said she was just so tired of being in the spotlight, tired of everyone building a career on her back, she just wanted it to be over. And her final words, they were just as bizarre and confusing as her entire life. Just before her execution in 2002, this is what she said. It's this strange, defiant farewell that's become a huge part of her whole twisted legacy. Which leaves us right back where we started, with this huge, unsettling question. Was Aileen Wuornos a monster born or a monster made? Was she just pure evil from the start, a cold-blooded predator? Or was she a person so completely broken by life, by trauma, by abuse, by betrayal, that she was forged into a monster? The scary part is, you can look at the evidence and make a pretty strong case for both.